Hey everybody, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for this devotional. Today we're in Acts chapter 20. I'm going to be reading verses 1 through 3. Here's where we pick up. It reads, After the uproar ceased, Paul sent for the disciples, and after encouraging them, he said farewell and departed for Macedonia. When he had gone through those regions, he had given them much encouragement. He came to Greece. There he spent 3 months, and when a plot was made against him by the Jews, he was about to set sail for Syria. He decided to return through Macedonia. So after more than 2 years, Paul decides to leave Ephesus. And in this text, we get a very short summary by Dr. Luke, the author, about what happens next. If you want to read the fuller context of this, you need to read 2 Corinthians chapters 1 through 7. Remember, the book of Acts just gives us a flyover of history, but if you want to look at what's going on in these churches that Paul visits, all you need to do is to read their respective letters. But to give you a quick look, here's a summary of what's happening in Acts chapter 20, verses 1 through 3. So Paul leaves Ephesus. He travels to the region of Macedonia. He's hoping to meet up with this guy named Titus, who was at Corinth. Now, right now, the Corinthian church was having all kinds of issues, which is why Paul wrote a letter to them entitled 1 Corinthians. In this letter, Paul instructs them on addressing all these matters, and Titus is over there trying to help. As Paul leaves Ephesus, he stops at Troas and does some ministry there, but he's hoping to meet up with Titus and kind of hear a good report. But Titus doesn't show up. So Paul travels further into Macedonia, probably stopping at Philippi, hoping to run into him. And guess what? He finally does connect with Titus. And Titus communicates to Paul that the issues in Corinth had been dealt with and reconciled. But somewhere during this time, Paul writes another letter, 2 Corinthians, a letter that he sent to the people in Corinth before he came to them. As we know, Paul did finally arrive at Corinth. He stays there for 3 months, which in this text he references when he talks about visiting regions of Greece. Now, this would be his last visit to Corinth. And guess what Paul did during these 3 months there? Just 3 months. He wrote the letter to the Romans. Easily, the greatest book he ever wrote. And guess what? All this happens in 3 verses right here. And that's a lot of stuff, right? That's a lot of ministry that happens in 3 short and very cryptic verses. You know, I think sometimes we underestimate the power and the impact and the consequence of daily obedience. I mean, don't we? We fail to see how God uses the daily actions of listening and following Him to involve us in a strategy that reaches way beyond our life. This is because we have such a myopic view of life, isn't it? This is because we don't see the same way that God sees. It even appears here that Dr. Luke skips over some significant events as he recounts history. I mean, in 3 verses here, Paul went from Ephesus to Troas to Philippi to Corinth and maybe visited other cities. He met up with people like Titus and many others along the way. In addition, he wrote at least 2 books during this time, at least 2, 2 Corinthians and Romans, which, by the way, are letters we read even today and continue to have an impact in the lives of people around the world. So today, here's my message to you. If you feel a little unaccomplished and frustrated, I know how you feel. I actually think Paul knows how you feel. I think he was a little frustrated with the Corinthian church. I know this by the way he wrote letters to them and what he said. And you may need to hear this today. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel frustrated and unaccomplished. But in this feeling, don't do this. Don't stop being obedient. Just be obedient in your frustration. I mean, if you have a frustrating marriage or a frustrating job or a frustrating child, don't let feelings of frustration deter you. Be obedient, because you may discover one day that during your time of frustration, God was doing more than you thought that He was. And you may look up one day to discover that God was impacting the world around you in a way that you could not see. So today, fellas, if you're frustrated, let me know your frustrations below. Just leave them in the comments below. I'll pray for you. But don't give up. Be obedient. I love you guys. If you like this devotional, share it with someone you know who may be frustrated too, by the way. And I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.